Alright guys, here we are, week 7, module 1, Asian and African resistance. So last week, remember we talked about Gandhi and his salt marches to the sea and comparing and contrasting him to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. here in the United States and the use of nonviolent resistance. This week we're going to be talking about Asian and African resistance, obviously to European colonial powers. So, our objective here is going to be analyzing primary source documents and answering text-dependent questions, regarding new colonialism. Our language objective is that you will be able to explain the motivations for Asian and African resistance movements using various word forms of colonialism, yikes. And our essential question that you'll be able to answer by the end of this lesson, is why would formerly colonized nations want to resist the control of European nations? By the end of today, you should have this Google Doc finished and turned in. There is not going to be an Edulastic quiz. All right, first let's take a look at some of our vocabulary here. Colonialism is the policy of taking over distant countries to get rich off of their people and resources. So we've talked about colonization, colonialism all year long in Africa, in Asia, and we're going to continue that today. So going in and taking resources for your own benefit. Formerly colonized nations, that concept is where a nation was once under a colonial rule but has since become independent in more modern times. So we were a formerly colonized nation here in the United States. We were formerly colonized by Great Britain. We broke away from them in 1776. But we technically are still considered a formerly colonized nation. And last but not least, resistance is the effort made to stop or fight against someone or something. So nonviolent resistance, violent resistance, to stop or fight against someone or something. Let's move on to our do now. You're going to look at this letter that Gandhi wrote to Adolf Hitler. Remember Hitler, the leader of Germany and the Nazi Party. He ruled Germany from 1933 to 1945. And he ultimately was responsible for the final solution, where 6 million Jews and 4 million other people, less desirable people, were sent to concentration camps and to their deaths. So we're going to read this letter, and we're going to respond to some reflection questions underneath. So he says, this is Gandhi writing to Hitler, "Dear friend, friends have been urging me to write to you for the sake of humanity, but I have resisted their request because of the feeling that any letter from me would be an impertinence. Something tells me that I must not calculate it, and that I must make my appeal for whatever it may be worth. It is quite clear that you are today the one person in the world who can prevent a war which may reduce humanity to the savage state. Must you pay the price for an object, however worthy it may appear to you to be? Will you listen to the appeal of one who has deliberately shunned the method of war not without considerable success? Anyway, I anticipate your forgiveness if I have erred in writing you. I remain your sincere friend, Mahatma Gandhi." So in this blue section that we have highlighted here, Gandhi is referring to his own success with nonviolence and wondering if Hitler, who pushed for violence, ultimately like invasion of other territories through violent means, would listen to him. So he asks, will you listen to the appeal of one who has deliberately shunned the method of war, not without considerable success? So he's saying, actually, I've been pretty successful at nonviolence. Will you follow in my footsteps? And now I want you to look at this yellow quote that I highlighted as well. It is quite clear that you are today the one person in the world who can prevent a war which may reduce humanity to the savage state. So looking at that quote highlighted in yellow, what does Gandhi want Hitler to do? So you're starting that sentence stem based on this quote. Gandhi wants Hitler to what? Ultimately, Gandhi wants Hitler to not invade other nations or use violence to get what he desires, which is control over Europe and European territories. So that's ultimately what he's saying, like, it's within your control to not go to war. And then question 2, we know as historians that Gandhi's letter did not stop Hitler. We are aware that Gandhi did not get him to use nonviolent methods. Why was it important for him to send the letter and resist anyway? So Gandhi likely knew. He actually says at the beginning of his letter, he says, "Friends have been urging me to write for the sake of humanity, but I have resisted their requests because of the feeling that any letter from me would be of impertinence." So he's basically saying, like, friends have been telling me to write to you and ask you to not go to war, ask you to use nonviolence, but I have had this feeling that you weren't going to listen to me. Why was it important that he still send the letter? He knew before he even sent it that it wasn't going to work, but why was it important that he still write and send this letter? And I think that it was important to write this letter because Gandhi believed in nonviolence. And hoped for the sake of humanity. Just not like this hyphenated nonviolence. The sake of humanity. That he could urge Hitler to stop his war and turn to helping rather than hurting. Great, that's fine. All right. It's actually really powerful to think like Gandhi, who is often thought of as the most peaceful of men, was writing to considerably one of the worst humans in the history of humanity. And to say, like, I urge you to think differently about this. All right, let's move on to our language activity. We're going to be looking at colonialism, and we're going to review all the different forms of how colonialism is used. So this key point is that students will be able to remember colonialism and its impact on the colonized and colonizers. So remember, if you need to define colonialism kind of separately, you can click on that and it takes you to vocabulary. If you want more information, this is a kind of a fun video, the range of European colonization across the world, but definitely an interesting look through. So also, I urge you to take a look at this political cartoon. We see the mother country here. She's quite plump. She's got jewels. She's got her sash. She's sitting down. And then each of her colonies are serving her up gold and silver, foodstuffs, and raw materials already when her table is full. It's very interesting. All right, a colony is a noun, an area that is being controlled by another, often another usually distant country. So we think about England controlled large swaths of Africa, particularly southern Africa, controlled many parts of North America, and yet there are very tiny islands. They are pretty distant, but the colony is what is being controlled. A colonizer is a noun, a country that sends settlers to and controls that distant country. So the United States was a colony, the United Kingdom or Great Britain was the colonizer. The colonized is a country that has been taken over by a colonizer. So colony or colonized kind of go together. To colonize is to send settlers and to take control of a distant land. And colonialism is the policy of taking over distant countries to get rich off of their people and their resources. So kind of a lot of different forms of colonialism. And obviously distant means far away. So now it's your turn. You're going to fill in the blanks where these lines are. And you're going to use colony, colonizer, colonized, colonize, colonized, colonize, or colonialism to fill in that blank. So question number 3. In the 1600s, England sent people to settle in America. England was a blank of North America. Was it a colony, colonizer, colonized, colonize, colonialism? So England taking over North America. I know that that makes them the colonizer. So I'm going to fill in colonizer. All right, so the scramble for Africa, which we studied at the beginning of the year, in the late 1800s was a time when many European countries wanted to blank African lands for their own profit and power. They wanted to colonize. Number 5. The country of Australia, country and continent of Australia, was at one point a British blank. The British originally controlled it as a place to send criminals. This is a colony. It was a British colony, just like the United States. The policy of had disastrous social, political, and cultural and economic consequences for colonized nations. So the policy of colony, colonizer, colonized, colonize, or colonialism. Which was the policy? I see policy in this definition. I'm going to put it here. Colonialism. Had disastrous effects. All right, number 7. In the 1600s, England sent people... What? These are repeats. Guys, I just caught this. Repeats. Very weird. Let's get rid of these. You won't see them. They'll be gone. Great. And then this last question, why would smaller countries who have or had been colonized want to resist and fight back? So why did the United States want to fight back? Why would South Africa want to fight back? Why did Egypt want to fight back? Why do smaller countries that had been colonized want to resist and fight back? So smaller colonized nations would want to resist colonialism because, I think this is like a pretty interesting, we could just go to this definition, because it had disastrous social, political, cultural, and economic consequences for the colonized nation. I'm actually just going to pop this down here. That's why. It was disastrous. It took away their rights. It took away their freedoms. In some cases, it meant that they had to change their clothing. We talked about how their languages were changed, how religious oppression took place. It just wasn't great for somebody to come in and take over your land. The example I gave in trimester 1 was if I came to your house and I told you it's my house now, and from now on you're going to speak my language, and we're going to eat my food, and I'm going to use your things how I want them. And if I don't like them, I'm going to get rid of them. How would you have felt? And that's sort of the idea of colonialism. So, in the next video, we're going to go through this guided practice analyzing, and I will explain to you how this looks a little bit different. Thanks, guys.